Nashville, the entertainment capital of America. But if you're a race fan, you know this is also one of the nuclei of stock car racing. It's spring. We're at the Nashville Fairgrounds. We must be here for stock cars. Yes, we are, the AC-Delco Challenge Series. However, as you can see, it is raining. Hi, everybody. I'm Larry Newber along with Rob Albright. Rob, it's disappointing when this happens. By the way, it has not been officially canceled for this afternoon yet, but certainly there will be no on-time start. Now, this was to have been a celebration. This is the 25th year of the American Speed Association, but it was also a brand new beginning for ASA.
Beginnings in a new way, in a lot of different ways, Larry. Brand new cars, brand new teams, and a whole lot of brand new drivers to the ASA scene.
Well, it is very, very wet. It's been raining off and on most of the day, and we've checked with the Weather Bureau, and as you can see, Rob, not a whole lot of good news.
No, it's a 75% humidity right now. It looks to me more like 100%.
Well, not only this year are the cars new, but we have 12 brand new rookies, sure to bring a lot of excitement. All the veterans are coming back. One of the most dramatic weekends was turned in by the six-time and defending champion Mike Eddy. Perhaps a little bit more on that later. Meanwhile, standing by down in the pit area, the man who will be covering the pits for us again this year is Ralph Shaheen. He's standing by with Jay Sauter.
Well, Larry, unfortunately, the one emotion flowing through pit lane right now is one of frustration. As you can see, the rain is coming down. It's a bit of a drizzle down here right now. And one guy who was really looking forward to a good weekend was Jay Sauter. You got new cars, new sponsor, and third on the grid if we were to go racing here this afternoon.
Well, thanks, Ralph. I want to say happy Easter to everybody at home. The new cars are excellent. ASA has done a fine job with these cars. They're just as fast, they look better, and they really feel stable. As far as our team, we're in great shape. The Casey Motorsports team, in addition to Blue Coral, Auto Famblane, we were ready today. We're poised. The team worked hard all year. The car came out excellent. We were ready to win today.
I think he is exactly that, Larry. He is ready to win, and hopefully we'll get a chance to find out if he can.
We here at the booth would also like to echo those sentiments. A happy Easter to everyone. Of course, this is a day for friends and family, and we hope that you are sharing it with you and yours. Now, there will be a lot of racing action on this station later this afternoon. Matter of fact, after the next commercial break, so please do stay tuned. We will also join you several times with updates on the conditions here at Nashville, so stay with us. The 1992 AC-Delco Challenge Series on TNN is brought to you in part by the Winds Oil Company, makers of Winds Hot Shot Fuel products. One shot and you'll feel the difference. And by Armor All. There's a fountain of youth and we own the patent. And by Goodyear, #1 in tires. And by Kawasaki. Let the good times roll. I guess it's not unusual for it to rain in the spring, and unfortunately it's raining in Nashville, Tennessee right now, where we had hoped to bring you the American Speed Association race, the first one of the 1992 season. Rob, we mentioned that it's been a full weekend of activity, and incidentally, there will be some activity on your screen, so stay with us. But back to the live stuff we had the last couple of days. We mentioned Eddie.
Well, I'll tell you, yesterday afternoon, Larry, we stood down in the pits, information gathering. Suddenly we heard the screeching of tires on the turn 3 banking. Rookie driver Joe Knott was sliding sideways, and just seconds afterward, a very loud kaboom, and Mike Eddy had slid backwards into him, doing terminal damage to the Knott machine, severe damage to Mike's car.
It appeared to be terminal, and Mike pulled off miracle of all miracles. That crew put that car back together, literally rebuilding it in the space of about 2 hours. Now, last year here at the Nashville Motor Raceway was one of the most outstanding races of the 1991 season. Stay with us if we run the whole show, because you're not going to know who's going to win until the last lap. The crowd stands anticipating the green flag. Hansen and Waltrip bear on a corner number 4. Hansen gets a gigantic jump. We're green at Nashville.
Scott Hansen leading the field down into turn number 1 with Darrell Waltrip right behind as the field files past the start-finish line.
250 laps to go. Despite that deficit that Waltrip got at the start, he moves in on Hansen.
The most terrifying part of any race is the early stages of the event. A lot of these drivers either have sponsors today that they want to impress on national television, or they're seeking national sponsorship. We expect to see moves back in the pack. Two drivers right now that are only focused on one another. The pole sitter and current leader Scott Hansen, and pressing him hard in the very early going, trying down low, now working to the high side, Darrell Waltrip in car number 17.
ASA racing is not unlike any other form of racing in America. It's not often that the people who lead and dominate the first 10 laps of the race win. Michael Andretti, I know, has been discounting that theory of recent. This is not an indication that Hansen and Waltrip are going to dominate this race, although every driver to a man fears Waltrip at this track.
Well, they certainly do. When I talked to Ted Musgrave in the pit area after qualifying yesterday, he pretty much had conceded this race to Waltrip. He said Waltrip had installed some trick things on the rear suspension of his race car that he thought would work to his advantage as the right side tires begin to wear.
Waltrip goes to the inside of Hansen into corner number 1. He holds the line coming out of 2. Hansen tromps the accelerator out of the high bank, corner number 2. Waltrip snuggles right down on the bottom. That car is working.
As close as qualifications were yesterday, I'm surprised, Larry, that these two drivers have been able to build such a significant early lead over the third-place car of Harold Fair at this moment.
Rob, I'll tell you, we're going to document a story for you about the man whom I believe is the fastest guy in the racetrack in these early laps. We're going to show him to you right now. It's a white number 90. It's Kent Stauffer, and there he is. He's had a tremendous race. He's running fourth.
Larry, if there's a guy in this series that epitomizes the terminology blue-collar racer, it's Kent Stauffer in car number 90. A lot of folks have felt for a number of years since he built and maintained his own race cars that if he ever got a shot at the really good stuff, he could run up in front. He's excited. He brought a brand new car to Nashville this weekend, a brand new Ford V6 underneath the hood, and he's sure making those folks in Dearborn happy in the early going.
Ken Stauffer is running right now in fourth position on the racetrack. He is currently ranked 11th in the point standings, and as Rob mentioned, is one of only 2 Fords in this race. And Stauffer has just turned in a terrific ride. He is actually closed in on the 2 race leaders, Darrell Waltrip and Scott Hansen.
What I wonder at this point is if Darrell Waltrip's strategy is wise. We watched a last chance qualifying race yesterday, Larry. Went down to the pits and looked at the tires of the race cars, and they were literally worn out after 25 laps with a much harder compound than these drivers used last year. These are, in fact, the same tires that they utilized on the very fast Milwaukee Mile.
I think one of the keys that you'll see, watch where Waltrip and Hansen run when they're in the race, when they're in the corners. They're right down on the bottom, saving those tires as much as they possibly can.
I think a lot of the drivers at this juncture are not too concerned about picking their way to the front. Most of the front runners that we talked about or talked to yesterday, the drivers that are expected to contest for the win today, said that probably 4 pit stops would be required to change right side tires 3 times and the lefts at least once. And I think that bears pointing out, Larry, you can only change 2 tires at a time on any yellow flag pit stop. And that will create some real strategy on the part of the drivers and their pit crews.
Mike Eddy has been the man to beat. Now, this is another double-digit car. This is the green and white number 66 of Glenn Allen Jr. Twice this year he has sat on the pole, and Rob, he is backing up. He has a problem.
He certainly does. Johnny Benson Jr., the current points leader, just went past him as the leaders already have begun to move into some lap traffic.
It's Waltrip, Hansen, as we take a look at 20-year-old Glenn Allen, the former high school football star. Third is Harold Fair with Kent Stauffer. Yes, that's right, ASA fans. Kent Stauffer running a very competitive 4th position and moving in. Right now in 5th position is used to be the Bluebird. Now it's Bob Seneca in a predominantly white car. And one of the race favorites has pitted. Pulling into pit lane is Ted Musgrave.
Well, it works to Ted's disadvantage that he runs only a handful of ASA shows. He runs now predominantly in the Deep South. This is his first appearance with ASA in 1991, and the biggest question that I had was the preparedness of this race car.
Ralph Shaheen is standing by in the pits talking with the man calling the shots for Darrell Waltrip.
That man is Eddie Jones. Eddie, Darrell's running away from him right now. Is that a safe strategy? Can he keep this pace up all day?
Well, it's always been Darrell's practice here at Nashville to run as good as he could all day because you never know when anything's going to happen. Any advantage you get like any other race, you just have to make it run while you can.
Are you worried about tire wear here?
No, not at this time because we figure it wasn't that wear and change things. So we think we'll be in pretty good shape. Tires look good in practice.
14 laps are down. That means we have about 235 to go. There is race leader Darrell Waltrip. Just to update you on Musgrave, he has pulled from the pits. And now our latest victim on the racetrack is Jeff Neal, a man who comes from a racing family. known for developing racing engines, is just about coming to a stop on the back straightaway. I don't think he's going to make it all the way around.
This is a major disappointment for Jeff Neal. He had such high expectations here today. He'd been off to his best start in 1991 since he earned the Rookie of the Year honors in 1988. He had several top 10 finishes to his credit. He ranked 7th in the point standings, and they had a special thing to work for today. His crew chief, Harold Fair's son, Harold Jr., had his grandfather pass away this week. So they were really hoping for a strong run in the Z-Rex Buick here this weekend.
The yellow coming out for Jeff Neal, who started this race in 10th position, but with the yellow coming out now and his car sitting silently at the entrance of corner number 3, he's going to be slipping back several laps. He was very anticipatory about today's race. He had a lot of confidence coming in here. He actually felt that he had a shot at the first couple of rows, but it didn't work out that way. Respectable, he was 10th, but there wasn't quite the competitiveness that he had hoped for.
Jeff Neal did not want to be out of this race this early. You can literally feel with him the frustration that has welled up in his heart as he sits haplessly and helplessly in car number 5 on the backstretch.
We commented about Glenn Allen Jr., the Cincinnati, Ohio. We no longer can call him a teenager. Now he's finally 20, slowing down noticeably in the early laps. Ralph Shaheen.
Well, they've got the problem underneath the hood, Larry. They think they are losing a cylinder. So Glenn Allen is radioed into the crew. The crew is going to work under the hood, searching for the problem. They're going to put the hood back down and send it back out and hopefully see if it wasn't the cylinder, but maybe something a little bit more minor than that. So right now, frustration for Glenn Allen Jr. as well.
Occasionally, Larry, it can be something as simple as a spark plug wire that has come loose from the race car, a wire off the distributor, something in the ignition system, and I'm sure that's what they're hoping for at this moment.
Glenn Allen Jr. is certainly one of the rising stars in the American Speed Association, and people are predicting great things for this young man. You mentioned he's only 20, but this is actually his 5th season in the American Speed Association. He started the season off with a roar, 2 poles plus a win at Columbus, Ohio, not too far from his home of Cincinnati, but it's been a struggle since then.
I've never seen anyone mature in such a short period of time. His first year, he was a literal joke on the racetrack. A lot of folks thought his father, Glenn Allen Sr., had brought him to the major leagues too soon. Every racetrack he spun, most tracks, he hit something or somebody. Boy, has he grown up, and he proved that he has the mettle to run up front by winning the opening race of the season this year at Columbus.
Rob, you may have been very close. Ralph reports that apparently it was a spark plug problem for Glenn Allen Jr., so he'll go back to the back of the pack. We've only had 2 cars drop to the wayside at this point. Jeff Neal's car, the Xerox number 5, sits in the pit area at this point, as does Tim Vidoa's brand new Ford Thunderbird. We're going back to green, and Glenn Allen got work cut out for him.
He certainly does well at the rear of the pack. Ted Musgrave is back there as well, but he's several laps down. And we also noticed that Rookie of the Year leader Tim Vidoa has brought his brand new Ford Thunderbird on pit road, so maybe Ralph can bring us up to date on what's going there as Waltrip just continues to set the pace out front.
Back green at the Nashville Motor Raceway. This is the American Speed Association live on TNN, and Darrell Waltrip has grabbed the early lead after about 1/10 of this race has gone by. Running second is pole setter Scott Hansen, and there is a change for position in the top 10.
Mike Eddy is now trying to make his way toward the front. He's not normally known for his patience. He likes to get to the front and run in front as long as he can, literally sideways out of turn number 4 as he tries to make the move on the youngster from Michigan, Tim Steele. And Steele is no slouch, Gary. He will not move over and let him by.
Riding with Mike Eddy. Let's follow him around as he follows Tim Steele.
And you can see just how rough a ride it is for these drivers as we continue to ride with Mike Eddy, and for Ted Musgrave fans, Larry, back on pit road for a second time. Not a good day.
Ted Musgrave back in the pits. He had a left, make that a right front tire go flat. His first problem was a panhard bar that moved on him. Jeff Neal's problem, we found out, gentlemen, was ignition problems. They pushed that car back behind the wall now, and we'll try and get a word with Jeff.
Mike Eddy continues to do battle with Tim Steele in car number 89, and look who's lurking right behind him. It's our current points leader, Johnny Benson Jr., who's begun to show some strength in car number 21.
At 6th and 7th, well, it's a tie for 6th right now. Number 88 on the inside, number 89 on the outside. Apparently, that's Steele's problem. His digit number is 1 too high than Mike Eddy. 6th and 7th again. You mentioned Benson. He is 8th, and running in 9th right now is Dennis Lantman. Again, Dennis also having a terrific season this year in the ASA. Eddie and Steele come together out of corner number 2. There's a bump right there when the cars go over a tunnel that leads from the outside of the track to the inside.
And now this is what Mike Eddy would see if he had a rear view mirror and was able to see what's going on with Tim Steele. Steele just will not give up the fight. And
trouble in corner number 4.
And down in turn number 4, several cars have come together. You can see the smoke. Pat Bordeaux involved in car number 4. The rookie Kenny Adams in car number 86.
And I think
also.
Glenn Allen was also swept up in that. It was just a slight love tap, as most of the confusion was over by the time Allen got there. But another setback for Glenn Allen. If the yellow comes out, he does remain on the lead lap.
Glenn Allen had been trying to pick his way back up toward the front of the field. The ignition problem apparently solved for car number 66, and Larry came very close to going a lap down early.
He did indeed. We've gone back yellow with 27 laps down. Darrell Waltrip continues to set the pace here. Now, here's what the wreck looked like from the camera that we have perched right on top of the wall coming out at corner number 4.
Exiting the 4th turn, looking now for Glenn Allen Jr. He was really not involved. He was caught up in a tangle between car number 86, that's the machine of Kenny Adams, the Willowick, Ohio chauffeur, and Pat Bordeaux, who today was making his first ever ASA start, a rather inauspicious debut.
So the hometown boy, or the man who knows this racetrack better than anybody else, good old DW, has been showing his heels to everybody. Can he hold on? We'll find out. The man whose most glorious moment in his personal racing career, Gary St. Amant, when he won here at this racetrack in 1990, is limping around the speedway. A lot of smoke coming out from what appears to be the right front. We first thought it might have been a tire problem, but now it appears to be something in the engine. Ralph, what do you think?
Well, Larry, actually, it's a couple of problems from what the crew is telling me. Yes, he does think he has a tire going down on the right side, but they also think they might have an oil leak. You can see the crew taking a peek inside through the wheel well, trying to maybe catch a glimpse of some oil dropping down. Gary talking to them through the radio. Now they're going to lift the hood. The engine is still running. The hood on the asbestos aluminum will come up now, and they'll search a little deeper for that oil leak.
Thanks, Ralph. Well, the laps are going by as Terry Baldry is the next to pull in. The laps are going by on Gary St. Amant, and unlike in 1990, he will not win at Nashville this year. Terry Baldry, another one of the rookie candidates, as Gary St. Amant's engine, we are told, has been turned off. Baldry from Umro, Wisconsin. His best finishes this year have been a pair of 11th places at Columbus and Cayuga up in Canada, but Baldry also comes to a stop silently in the pits. Back up front, it continues to be DW.
Well, he certainly is showing his heels to everybody here this afternoon. I think a lot of the drivers could utilize a caution as Glenn Allen Jr. has come back on pit road in car number 66 without question, an unscheduled pit stop at this point in the race. I'm sure most of the drivers would appreciate a caution if we would have one in the near-term future. I'm sure we would see most of them in for fresh tires.
At the top of the show, we gave you a very thumbnail sketch of the history of the American Speed Association and showed you a picture in Victory Lane in 1972 of Darrell Waltrip. That was the first ever National American Speed Association race, and Darrell Waltrip won it.
Tony Raines continues to be the major story of this race outside of Waltrip's domination in the early going, as he has just picked up another position, moving around defending series champion Bob Seneker. And Gary, he does not really seem to be working all that hard. It's easy when he gets around someone.
Glenn Allen changed right side tires, got a little bit of gas. He is back out. St. Amant has gone behind the pit wall. They're doing some major repair work on Gary St. Amant's car, but now it's simply a matter of gathering points and trying to finish as far up as you possibly can inside the top corner.
Tony Raines has moved up into the 7th position and rides right on the heels of the Nationwide Pontiac of Mike Eddy. Again, we remind you that Mike Eddy has won 3 consecutive American Speed Association AC-Delco Challenge Series events after a horrendous start. His first 2 outings didn't even finish the races. He has come on since then with a vengeance. Expected to move straight to the front and a win here this afternoon. That doesn't look like it's going to materialize unless he can find whatever is plaguing the handling of that race car.
Mike Eddy is very, very cagey in ASA races. Make no mistake about it. Based on what we've seen from Mike Eddy over the past 19 years in this type of racing, frankly speaking, his status after the halfway point doesn't mean all that much as long as he's on the lead lap. He knows that in this type of racing, usually there's a yellow flag, and Mike Eddy has an amazing, almost uncanny ability to run his fastest laps near the end of the races every weekend.
think it has a lot to do with attitude. You know, he just puts the pedal down and runs the car however he has to. He's one of that rare breed of drivers that no matter what the car is doing, he'll figure out a way to make it perform at its best. Meanwhile, up in front, we see that leader Darrell Waltrip has just put Kenny Schrader a lap down, Larry.
Well, Ralph, you don't have an easy task right now. Here's a man who was euphoric about being in Nashville last year, and he's got to be depressed right now, Ralph.
Well, Larry, this certainly isn't the conversation he was hoping to have with me. Gary, where does the oil seem to be leaking out of the car?
Well, Ralph, I think we got a broken oil cooler. I don't know if one of the lines come loose or if something, debris got in the cooler or what, but it's definitely making a little slick for this Rebesta Chevrolet.
This racetrack was real slippery yesterday, and it seems to be the same way today. Just how bad is it out there?
Well, I'll tell you, it's getting worse. You know, the race goes on, the racetrack, the sun's getting hotter, and the racetrack is definitely getting slick. I'll tell you what, I think Darrell, he done something. He out-tricked everybody this weekend, but hopefully maybe one of our ASA guys can come back and beat him.
Well, Gary St. Amant probably thinks he's having the longest day of his career right now, but if this racetrack is anywhere near as slippery as he says it is, it's going to be a long day for some of the guys out there as well.
This is 7th position, still very much up for grabs. Is Steady Eddie, Mike Eddy, and the exciting Tony Rainman. Tony Raines is moving on the outside. Tony has moved up. We have a spin in corner number 4. It's Glenn Allen Jr. No contact with any other car as we continue to ride inside with Mike Eddy. The yellow flag comes out. You see Tony, he had the advantage as that yellow went out. There's Glenn back underway under his own power, and he is having one long day.
He sure is, and undoubtedly, Larry, he's the only driver unhappy that the yellow has just been displayed on the racetrack, with perhaps the exception of Darrell Waltrip, who's just had things his own way. Now is the first opportunity that these drivers are going to have to make the necessary chassis adjustments. Only one type of tire, so it's not as if they can change compounds, but they can make chassis adjustments.
One stop required, but there is no way that you can go the distance with one stop. We're going to watch for this incident involving Glenn Allen. There it is at the top of the screen.
Coming out of turn number 4, Glenn just got up into the loose stuff. We refer to it as the marbles, and he spins. Fortunately, he didn't hit anything or anybody.
Pit stops are wholesale. All of the leaders are now coming in. You can see everyone pulling into their respective pit stall. There's the number 53 of Hansen. We've had a crash at the entrance to the pits. It is, I believe, Tim Fedowa in one of the 2 Ford Thunderbirds entered here today. There is Tim Fedowa crashed along the inside wall as the crowd cheers because Darrell Waltrip is the first to leave, but Tim Fedowa has a sudden stop to his afternoon. He was struggling with the engine, and it was a traffic jam coming into the pits. There is the barricade that Tim Fedowa hit as he caught the end of the pit wall just as he was entering the pits, and major damage on that Ford.
What an incredible sight. He hit that barricade, Larry, and it looked like a geyser of sand just erupted from that thing, and water. We see on the entrance to pit road, there's a lot of water on the racetrack. Amazingly, he's able to drive that machine back onto pit road as all of the leaders have now been in and back onto the racetrack. Everybody came in. Darrell Waltrip had an outstanding pit stop and will reassume the lead just the way he went in. Harold Fair is second, but the big change, Mike Eddy's pit crew did an outstanding job. He'll run third when we go back to green.
Actually, Mike Eddy's pit crew, as well as Mike Eddy, well, they've been around just a little bit. It really showed here in this first pit stop under yellow flag at Nashville.
Raines is coming back in.
Back at the Nashville Fairgrounds Motor Raceway in Nashville, Tennessee. That's the Bob Euchre row. That's the front row. It's all wet, just like all the other rows as the camera pans back. That's Bob Seneker and Gary St. Amant, who were scheduled to start this race. You have been watching the ASA race from 1991, and it's a very good one. Keep telling you that, and you will not be disappointed. Doesn't look real promising about this weather, does it?
It doesn't. They can race the track, they can race each other, but the greatest adversary for the racer is the weather, and he never wins that battle.
Well, Ralph Shaheen is patrolling the pits, and he's with a couple of guys who are down in victory lane, and they certainly would have been among the favorites. But, Ralph, I think their timing's a little bit off.
That it is, Larry. In fact, the only kind of racing we're doing here right now is bench racing, and I have 2 gentlemen to do a little of that with. And Glenn Allen's sporting a new driver's suit this year. He had a great season last year, and obviously you're looking forward to a great one here in 92.
Yeah, we are. We got a major sponsor, Track Auto Parts, and really we come down here to Nashville really ready, and we qualified 5th fastest, and the car was really good. We had a motor tighten up on us while we were qualifying, and didn't qualify as good as what we wanted, but you know, it's good enough starting spot for the big race, and we're really happy.
One thing we need to point out about that, Chris Weiss and the folks from Jay Sauter's KC Motorsports team had loaned Glenn an engine in case we were going to get the opportunity to run here today. And I think that's a nice bit of friendly help there. And one guy who has driven in all sorts of race cars, Kenny Schrader, joining us here today. And you've had a chance to drive this new ASA car. What do you think of it?
I really like it so far. You know, it's a little bit more like the Busch Grand National or the Winston Cup car. The new body rules, all the cars just look fantastic. Though they all look the same. The Luminas look like Luminas, and the Grand Prix look like Grand Prix. You can tell what they are, and I think it's a tremendous step for ASA. And I think it really shows the strength of the series when everybody had to build new cars, and they still show up with a full field right for the first race.
That's exactly right, Larry. We've heard estimates upwards of 70 cars being built to go racing with the ASA AC-Delco Challenge Series here in 92. And right now, we're going to get about 70 guys and go bench racing for a little while longer.
Well, you won't be short on material or driver's route, that's for sure. The ASA car in the past has set the standard for the late model stock car across the country, and this is quite a standard to emulate, these cars.
Well, it really is. Historically, the short track, I guess the comparison has always been ASA type car. That's what the local tracks have always run. Now ASA, at least for the time being, kind of stepped out on the ledge and said, push me off into the unknown. And what an exciting weekend it has been with all these new teams and going just as fast as they did with a car that is, in fact, 4 inches narrower and 2 inches taller than its predecessor.
A couple of prominent players in the race from 1991 that we're watching are Bob Seneker and Mike Eddy. I say prominent because, they've won the last 2 championships.
Well, they have, and it went down to the wire last year in 1991. Eddy finally winning his unprecedented 5th national championship. I think the reason we've got so many new faces this season is they thought that this new car would be the great equalizer. But those 2 old boys were still the toughest in practice all weekend.
Well, this weekend, as we alluded to a little earlier, has just been too long for Mike Eddy. He lost what appeared to be a car in practice on Saturday. Somehow they repaired it. They got it back together, but he hasn't had what you call a lot of extra sleep. Right now, he's standing by with Ralph, and Ralph also has another guest, a guy who also had a disappointment in qualifying. Ralph?
Well, it really was a disappointment, Larry, but you know, it was amazing how well his crew bounced back from it. Mike Eddy, a real tough time over in turn 3, and the crew put the car back together. What exactly was wrong with it, and how close to perfect is it now?
Well, the Nationwide Auto Parts Pontiac was tore up quite bad. Had the rear clip bent over about a foot, and the left front suspension ripped off, and the whole crew worked hard, diligently, and got it back together, and the car ran really good. In fact, I think it might be as good as it was before. So we just got to wait, and time will tell.
It really was an amazing task that your crew did to put the car back together. When talking to Mike Eddy's crew chief, Howard Thomas, I said, well, what do you have to do to the car now? He said, our biggest problem right now is just making sure we can get the tape to stick so it looks pretty when we get it out on the racetrack. And another guy who's having a real big weekend, he has a brand new baby daughter to congratulate him for, and a fantastic run, one of the only 2 cars to dip into the 19-second round, even though it was the second round of qualifying for you, Jeff.
It was a great accomplishment. As a new team, Split Fire spark plugs came out as a sponsor. The Pontiac worked real good. I think we're going to be in good shape. The car's real consistent and smooth. I really like these new cars. Looking for a good show.
Tell me about the baby daughter. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. We just had a baby girl Friday morning. I'd like to say hello to Alexandria, my wife, Tony. We're home.
Well, I think he's going to get a chance to get home here early and say hello to his brand new baby daughter, Larry. I know he's anxious about that, as he is anxious to go racing here with us today.
Rob, I look at Jeff and I think about Tony Raines, and then I think about Seneker and Eddy and Hansen, and you got to throw in Glenn Allen because he won a couple of times last year. Is that quartet beatable?
Oh, certainly. I don't think there's any question about it. I would seriously expect to see 2 or 3 brand new first-time names in victory lane this season, including certainly a Johnny Benson Jr. He's struggled through this weekend. He's another one of those drivers, maybe a little bit of an unknown commodity with his own team this year. He previously drove as a teammate to Bob Seneker on the Leroy Troop stable. Now he's doing his own thing, but he was fast in practice, a disappointing qualifying round.
What about this race in 1991 that we're watching? Who do you pick?
We were here, by the way. I read the last page of the book, and I know who wins, but it was fantastic all the way to the checkered flag.
Yeah, it really was. You're not going to be disappointed if you stay with this race. If you didn't see it a year ago, really do stay with it. I can tell you that last year, Mike Eddy won 7 times. Bob Seneker won 4 times. Darrell Waltrip, Well, maybe. Wait and see. He is competitive. Music City, USA, where raindrops are falling, is the most popular tune of the hour. We were here for the first race of the ASA new season, and we have been postponed. And frankly speaking, the ability to run a race today is beginning to look very doubtful. But we are treating you to one of the best races of the 1991 season. So here's the next segment of that event. This is the Delco Voyager 250 from the Nashville Motor Raceway. We are under yellow flag again. There have been several yellow flags in the first 80 laps. Ralph Shaheen is standing by with one of the latest victims of this yellow flag.
Tim Thiedo has been battling problems all day today, and Tim, something we haven't seen quite often in racing. You had a problem entering the pit lane.
Yeah, we were coming in kind of hard. We had pretty bad tires, and Ford Thunderbird, we got in a little bit. Someone they blew a motor a few laps back. We got in a little oil up there at the top of the pit, and it just lost it, and it went into the fence.
And a more frustrating point, Larry, is the fact that he debuted this car here this weekend.
Yeah, Ralph, there are still very high hopes for this race car. Earl Gertie is one of the most outstanding engine builders in America, and he's been working with the Ford Motor Company to construct this power plant specifically for the American Speed Association. And it certainly will be around for a long time. Now, there is Darrell Waltrip. I heard Rob comment just before we went to break that the team and he had a terrific pit stop. They are making a second supplemental pit stop under this yellow flag, and the hood is coming up. Now, it could simply be a chassis adjustment. It is not necessarily an indication that there's something wrong with the engine of this car.
Well, ASA cars are very technologically advanced. The shock absorbers are multiply adjustable. They may have thought about doing something, Gary. He came in, they looked at the hood, they pulled the pins out and stuck them right back in. Nothing.
Well, there was a moment of visual frustration on behalf of one of the crew members as he went to that hood. Looked like he was going to pull the pins. You can see Harold Fair is the new race leader now, and he looked very concerned about that. All things may not be rosy in the Western Auto pit right now.
Nothing Harold Fair would rather do than win his first ever championship in 1991. It took Bob Seneker 17 years to accomplish that, and Harold doesn't want it to go quite that long. Mike Eddy, as we said, is in third position. Scott Hansen is fourth. Johnny Benson has suddenly come to fifth position with great pit work. Bob Seneker is sixth. Ken Stauffer, who had moved into the third spot, is in seventh position.
There is Gary St. Amant, a winner here a year ago, as we mentioned, had very serious mechanical problems. About 5 minutes ago, lost several laps while the rest of the field was at green. They refired that Rivesto's car, and Gary St. Amant is going back into the race, but several laps back.
Last night I sat at dinner with some of the folks from Rivestos, and they said, if you can't win, at least get us on camera. Well, I think Gary would rather do both, but he is getting that machine on camera today.
On board with Harold Fair, one of the two drivers, the other being Mike Eddy, who is showing you these shots from in-car of this nearly 0.6 mile oval. I mean, it shows that it is not a full 3/4 mile racetrack, but I'll swear, the top of the banking where on occasion you have to run, it's a long ways away. This is one of the major league racetracks among short tracks in America. Obviously, unless it's a mile in length, they don't call it a super speedway. But this is a killer racetrack. This is a tough one.
Well, this is the view that you want if you've got a camera in your race car, and that is with the entire field bunched up behind you, not in front. And that's the lucky position of car number 81, Harold Fair.
Ralph Shaheen, you can bring us up to date on what's going on with DW.
First two things, Larry. We have the pins go in the hood. That was falling out of the hood, so they just replaced the pins and got going again. A little later on, when they get back into racing, we're going to show you his tires and what kind of wear he's getting.
Well, we commented that Waltrip looked like he was playing the conservative role down on the bottom of the racetrack, and apparently it was not conservative enough. Up front, black is the color. The black number 81 of Harold Fair. He leads this race now, and Mike Eddy, the veteran, going after immortality, we said at the top of the show. Let's at least call it an all-time ASA record. He's going to tie it today. If he can win, it would be the 4th time in a row.
Mike Eddy smells the lead without question in car number 88, that Nationwide Pontiac, looking the best it has all day. He goes to the high side of the racetrack. We've got cameras in both of these machines. We're going to look at each other. Eddy drops down low, and we've got a challenge for the point.
Mike Eddy in the Nationwide Pontiac moves to the inside of Harold Fair in the black, similarly painted car number 81, and Harold Fair sees Mike Eddy go by. So at lap number 88, the man who has won the last 3 races in a row, that's 3 of the 5 championship events in the 1991 American Speed Association season, asserts himself at the front. He now leads the pack.
Looking over the hood of Harold Fair's car number 81, and you can see Scott Hansen climbing back into the frame in car number 53.
Harold Fair running second. Brooke Cam. The average qualifying speed here was about 110 miles per hour, meaning that the cars are reaching a top speed just before they shut into the corners, perhaps approaching 150. You can see the self-cleaning lens.
There's Darrell Waltrip making his way through lap traffic, picking machines off one at a time, moving to the outside of Dennis Vogel's red and yellow car number 51, and he is not that far behind the leader, just about half a lap to make up between himself and Mike Eddy.
It's likely that Waltrip is going to need a yellow flag, and if the first 90 laps are any indication, he's going to get one. But the idea now is to be patient and to get by as many cars as he possibly can during this green flag segment. So should the yellow fly one more time, he'll be able to close up that much closer to race leaders Mike Eddy and Harold Fair. Darrell Waltrip is currently in 13th place.
At the moment, he's running right behind Dave Jackson.
Well, there is still more, I guess. Ralph, take it away. Go.
Well, Larry, we wanted to show you the tires that came off of Darrell Waltrip's car. Now, trust me, it is hot down here in the pits at Nashville. Now, the one thing the competitors were really worried about was a lot of buildup on these tires. And you can see it. Yeah, he's got some buildup on here, but nothing too severe. Not a lot worse than they were expecting to find here. So for at least Darrell Waltrip, his tires aren't that bad.
Pat Bordow in that Petty painted blue and hot pink car on the inside of the track is being lapped by the race leaders, as well as Darrell Waltrip, who is working his way through the field. Waltrip is fast approaching the top 10. Again, he led the majority of the first 80 laps of this race. Had to make an on-scheduled pit stop during yellow flag conditions. Fortunately for him, had to go to the back of the pack, and Waltrip is the man with the highest mountain to climb right now.
You see on that graphic that Darrell Waltrip's last ASA pole position came at Anderson Speedway, a quarter mile, and we've got trouble in turn 4.
Major crash in corner number 4, not because of the severity of the crash, but because of the people involved. That's Tim Steele spinning. Harold Fair is a part of that. He is the damaged car sitting sideways on the racetrack. Bob Seneker is backing down the front straightaway. He was involved. This was a crash among our race leaders. Harold Fair looks like he is out of this race.
Bob Seneker was able to drive away from the incident, apparently undamaged. And now we're inside of Harold Fair's car. We cannot see, at least from this perspective, the tail end of that automobile, but it has been heavily damaged as he made hard contact with the outside wall in between turns 3 and 4. And Larry, now you can see a little bit better the damage to that race car.
Maybe we'll have an opportunity to look at this race. This is how it happened, looking out the back of Harold Fair's car. Now, we cannot see it develop, but you're going to see the collision.
I think we're inside Mike Eddy's car. I'm not sure. See the Nationwide Auto Parts on the bumper? Now, look at Harold Fair. Very strange, Larry. It did not look like he lost control. It looked as if maybe something broke in the rear end of that race car, as it was what we refer to as a snap spin. He was running straight ahead, in control, and all of a sudden he was headed backwards and right straight into the wall.
Maybe we can look at that again. There was something strange flying up in the air. You can see it in front of Mike Eddy. Up along the wall, there is Fair colliding with the fence. Here comes Seneker through. Scott Hansen almost lost control. Seneker spins, hits nothing. On the outside, that's Johnny Benson Jr. coming to a stop. He was almost involved.
Dennis Lampman up at the top of the racetrack, and he's been up in the top 6.
There's Steele. Steele had nowhere to go. Musgrave simply sneaks through in that two-tone blue car. Meanwhile, everybody is pitting underneath this yellow flag. Now let's watch for this piece of debris, see if it's a factor in this.
And there's Fair going sideways. There it is. I wonder what that was. Apparently something came off another race car in front of Mike Eddy, or perhaps something off Eddy's car.
It did not look like it contributed to that incident, although it's possible because the timing was certainly strange on that debris. Certainly was not from Harold Fair's car, but a very disappointing moment for one of the top car driver combinations entered in today's race. He looked like he was a threat to win, but Harold Fair's day is over. We'll be back with more from Nashville after these words. The 1992 AC-Delco Challenge Series on TNN is brought to you in part by Krylon, the no runs, no drips, no errors spray paint. And by Parts Plus, America's family of auto parts stores. And by cold-filtered Miller Genuine Draft and Miller Genuine Draft Light, taking the country by storm. Now the rain continues at the Nashville Fairgrounds Motor Raceway. You're looking at the field of cars. Rob, in that field, we had 10 rookies qualify for this race, and we hear there are at least another 5, maybe 10 more coming.
So the story goes. In a lot of cases, though, Larry, the term rookie is a misnomer. A lot of championships among many of these drivers. But there is one young man in the field that has no previous stock car experience. I was excited to see him at the chapel service today, and Ralph is with him right now.
He does have a lot of racing experience, though, Rob, and it's a lot of open-wheel road racing experience, and that's Jerry Foyt. Jerry, one of the toughest years to be a rookie here with the ASA.
It certainly is. This ASA series is really tough. These guys run hard. I've just got the great opportunity to join longtime ASA supporter car owner Glenn Gillen and crew chief Jim Daly with the Justice Brothers Chevrolet. And I'm really looking forward to learning a lot this season, having a good time.
To give you an idea how tough this season's going to be for the rookies, if you think he's good, look at this guy over here, Terry Wenny. Now, most people know you as an open-wheel dirt track driver. Are you going to do some of that, too, or just stock cars?
I'm just going to do stock cars. I had thought about it, but we basically sold all the midget gear, and we're just going to put our efforts towards this.
Both of these drivers were qualified back in the pack past the 20th range. That ought to give you an idea how tough the field is this year.
All right, Ralph, thank you very much. Back to June 30th of 1991, the ASA race here at Nashville. We have just seen Harold Fair crash out. He was running in a very competitive second position. Darrell Waltrip is still in this race running up front. Mike Eddy still is strong. Seneca has been strong prior to the spin. Can he recover? Well, let's find out. Back to Nashville. Former national champions of the American Speed Association include Mike Eddy 5 times, Mark Martin, who won this track championship 3 times in a row, make this season championship 3 times in a row, once in the late 1970s. Rusty Wallace is a former ASA champion, as is Dick Trickle, and most recently Butch Miller. The defending champion is Bob Seneca, and though involved in an incident that precipitated the last yellow flag, he still has a chance today. As we go back to green end, Scott Hansen buries the throttle. Gary St. Amant has serious problems finding the handle as he goes into the number 1 corner. Cars are scattering, and what the result of that is that Scott Hansen turns out having about a straightaway lead.
The second result is that Johnny Benson Jr. has moved into second position, moving to the high side and taking that spot away from Mike Eddy. Eddy comes back to challenge on the low side now in car number 88 as they put car number 75, Scott Walters, in the center of the sandwich.
Anxious moment for Scott Walters, but he holds his line. He remains steady and true and straight in the middle of the racetrack, and Eddy and Benson are still side by side, despite each having passed Scott on different sides.
And we're taking a look now back in the field at car number 17, the machine of Darrell Waltrip, as he has Dennis Lampman minus the hood in tow, as those two try to work their way back up toward the front of the racetrack.
Waltrip has actually done very well. He is now, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10th in line on the racetrack. He has moved inside the top 10. Darrell Waltrip is coming.
What a tremendous restart for Scott Hansen, as very quickly he has built a 2-second lead. That's as large as we've seen all afternoon. And Larry, something that very definitely could come into play after overcast most of the early part of this race. The sun is shining brightly, and it is into the 90s.
That's John Benson in the white and red trim, number 21. Race driver is from Grand Rapids, Michigan. He comes from a rich racing tradition and heritage. His father, little John Benson Sr., was one of the scourges of the Midwest and the East Coast. About 25 years ago, his specialty was super modified racing. Then he switched to late models. He was very strong there, too.
He's doing battle with another second-generation driver, Jay Sauter, in car number 1. Look at Sauter move to the low side, reins up high, and more trouble.
That's the number 86 car.
Kenny Adams, the rookie driver of the Auto Site Pontiac, the driver from Willowick, Ohio, making his debut with his Nick Vitt-owned race car in 1991. Now, several seasons ago, he ran a local late model class for the same car owner. Nick has campaigned in ASA for 4 seasons, and Kenny has given the car its best run in its 4 years with the circuit.
So Scott Hansen, who really had a great breakaway at the last green flag, finds it off or not now, as the green flag segment only lasts about 4 or 5 laps. This is our 6th yellow flag of the day here at Nashville. Mike Eddy, you'll get a reprieve now. Mike Eddy gets to move right up on the tailpipes of Scott Hansen. John Benson Jr., who's really had a rough past 15 minutes, he's got to be thinking, wow, I'm glad I have a chance to breathe. He's almost been involved in a crash. He got stuck behind Gary St. Amant at the last green flag, and now things will calm down for him.
Also 6 drivers out of the race, and officially out. Car number 81, Harold Fair, after that incident in turn 3. Jeff Neal out early. Car number 55, the leading rookie contender, Tim Fedewa, has pulled his machine behind the wall, as has his nearest pursuer in the Pat Shower Memorial Rookie Award, Terry Baldry. Car number 18, Dean South, another rookie, is out, as is Dave Stamm in car number 22.
Well, Mike Eddy in the Nationwide Auto Parts Pontiac has a chance to tie Butch Miller for history, to win 4 ASA races in a row. How about it, Mike? What are your chances?
I think that I got a good chance of doing it. We didn't qualify fastest, but we're in our usual spot, and it's not usually the guy who starts on the pole that wins the race. It's a lot of consistency and how much you slow down. If you keep running the same speed all day, maybe I will be the fastest car tomorrow. I don't know. We just got to wait and see.
It's possible that one of the secrets of Mike Eddy is a guy by the name of Ed Howe, who won a lot of races as a race driver, both on dirt and pavement, also built a lot of cars. And Ralph, you got him right now. What's he doing? Taking credit for this Mike Eddy run?
Well, actually, we're with Howie Leto, the crew chief for the Baker Racing entry, is Scott Hansen, our leader. Now, Howie, we've had the sun show up. We've lost a lot of the humidity, and the gray skies have gone away. How is this affecting the handling of Scott's car?
Well, this track, traditionally, cars get very loose, and the heat and the sunshine aren't helping matters any. Most of the cars out here are quite loose. It's also kind of hard on the drivers. You know, next time we pit, we'll be giving Scott water and wet rags and so on. He keeps himself in good shape, you know. Well, we won't have any problem, but I'm sure a lot of the guys out there are pretty warm right now.
That was obviously Howie Leto, but I guess Ed Howe is going to appreciate all the free pub anyway.
Well, he sure will. Howie, of course, is kind of recognized in ASA circles as the real rookie groom, as he has taken 4 rookie drivers to Rookie of the Year honors, including Scott Hansen, as recently as 1989. Other drivers included the late Pat Shower, after whom the Rookie of the Year honor has been posthumously named, and Ted Musgrave. And if you get a real close look at Mike Eddy's car number 88, as we are now continuing to look at on the racetrack, the leader, Scott Hansen, Eddy has a very thin stripe of green around that white or that yellow car number 88, typifying the Ed Howe color green.
Ready to go back to green flag racing one more time. The green flickers, and Scott Hansen buries the throttle as he roars into corner number 1. He sees the man in black, the gold trim right behind him.
The veteran runs second, Mike Eddy, and a bunch of kids battling for 3rd, 4th, and 5th position. Points leader Johnny Benson, Jay Sauter, and Tony Raines really going at it.
Sure would like you to say he's a kid. Joe Scheer is right now in 6th position. He's in a block number 36, and Joe Scheer is one of the veteran ASA race drivers. And Scheer dodges Kenny Adams as they go into corner number 1. He holds on to 6th position. Up front, Mike Eddy is now challenging Hansen on the outside. Eddy racing for it.
Side by side, Hansen with the fast line at the bottom of the racetrack. The quick way around. Mike Eddy is there to challenge. He'll not pick up the lead that time by. Who's deeper into turn number 1? Still by the slightest of margins. It's Hansen down at the bottom of the racetrack, and Eddy drops in behind.
The Midland, Michigan driver, traditionally from Howell, Michigan. It's all up there in the central part of the Lower Peninsula. He's long been a mainstay of the American Speed Association, and certainly the 1991 season looms as perhaps his best ever.
Those 2 drivers separating themselves from the 3rd place battle between Tony Raines, who's appropriated that position, from Johnny Benson, and Jay Sauter.
Side by side there, fender to fender, going into corner number 3 on this half-mile racetrack. Eddy looked like he had the line, but Hansen running smoother down in the bottom. But right now, Mike Eddy is definitely out horsepowering Hansen. But can he handle around?
The heat is beginning to evidence itself, Larry. The last time the leaders paced 21 seconds flat yesterday. Scott Hansen's pole position qualifying time, 19.773 seconds. They're a little over a second off qualifying times from yesterday.
Scott Hansen continues to lead. You see the leaders' tail lights from the second running Mike Eddy, and Mike seems to have cooled his jets just a little bit. We are only 120 laps in. We're just past the halfway point in this 250-lap race. Eddie runs second. There you see, first and second on your screen. Tony Raines, a terrific run today. He has come all the way from 23rd position, and Tony Raines, the Pennsylvania driver, runs third, and it is a closing third. Fourth position is very much up for grabs right now. Wisconsin's Jay Sauter has it, and in fifth position is Michigan's John Benson Jr.
You can see that time as the leaders exited turn number 2, Tony Raines is reeling in the front runners. Mike Eddy, the man with the mission. After the second race of the season, the Nationwide 400 in Salem, he was mired in 18th position in the point standings. 3 consecutive victories later, he's climbed to 4th in the points, and he'd like another victory here this afternoon.
Tony Raines, whom you will see in the picture just momentarily, he is only about 10 car lengths behind Mike Eddy. There he is driving a brand new team this year. Now, Tony is the one on the team who has the most ASA experience, but the team has very little, and he, frankly speaking, expected that it would take till the mid-season for them to be competitive in this ETR Racing and E&L Brookridge Old. But he has been getting seemingly faster with every race. They were very optimistic yesterday rather, and paying off today, Sunday afternoon.
Last fall, the AC-Delco Challenge Series visited Jennerstown, Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh for the very first time ever, and a fellow was there by the name of Ernie Roselli. Ernie saw the ASA Series go, said, I wanted to go racing, hired Tony Raines, and this is what he's got.
It is really tightening up front. It is now a 3-car fight. That is Scott Hansen on the inside. Mike Eddy, he sees Tony Raines coming in the mirror. Mike says, I got to go now if I'm going to protect my position. Raines has caught them.
Raines is running phenomenally well. After the restart, he was 3.5 seconds back at 6th position. 10 laps later, he's challenging for second. Mike Eddy had better hustle, or they're going to be chasing the guy from formerly Northern Indiana, now Southern Pennsylvania.
Tony had the advantage of running in the preferred groove down in the bottom, but now if he wants to continue his climb to the front, he's got to go to the outside groove. No problem.
Out the back window of Mike Eddy's Nationwide Pontiac, you can see that Tony Raines has easily gotten past Scott Hansen and very soon to challenge for that top position.
So Tony Raines becomes the star at mid-race of this Nashville Motor Speedway American Speed Association event. Tony Raines is Mr. Speed here with 127 laps down, about 125 laps to go.
The first race of the season was tremendously embarrassing for Tony Raines. Ran a tremendous race on the Columbus Motor Speedway, brought the machine to second position at the checkered flag, only to be disqualified due to an illegal engine during tech inspection. The engine builder that they had hired came down, looked at it, and said, my fault, guys. These men do nothing about it. But Tony has been a bit embarrassed about that, Larry, ever since then. Really not a negative reflection on him. He's a straight-ahead young guy, and certainly, as we've seen today, a tremendous young racing talent.
Tony Raines is a man who he expected to be in this position, but very few of the people around him in his early 20s expected him to be there. He kept asking Ray Dillon, for whom he was doing some racing work, hey, I want to drive race cars. I want to move up to ASA. And Ray kept saying no. And finally, he could say no longer. Right now, that's beginning to look like a pretty darn good decision.
Again, we take a look out the back window of Mike Eddy's car number 88 as Raines draws ever closer in car number 25. He took some flack for this paint job, baby blue, if you will, and yellow. But it certainly stands out on the race course. Make no mistake, easy to spot.
Mike Eddy, once he assumed the lead, seems to actually have slowed just a bit. Perhaps Mike is being just a tad conservative as the front 3 cars, after a heated battle, now run reasonably comfortably with Eddy, Raines, and Hansen, the first 3. There's the number 21 car of John Benson Jr., and seemingly he has slowed a little bit. He's off of the rapid pace that he was running a few laps ago.
On the restart, the Valvoline Chevrolet of Benson was in the 3rd position. He's fallen well out of the top 10. He's now running in 11th and about a full straightaway behind the 10th place car number 17 of Darrell Waltrip, who's really battling at the moment with Dennis Lampman and Joe Shear for position. Benson swapped crew chiefs over the winter in an interesting move. He was Rookie of the Year, and car number 84, of course, Bob Seneker, the 1990 national champion. And an interesting move, they changed crew chiefs, and has proven to both of their advantage, I think, this season. Is what was a little bit of conflict sometimes between the 2 crews has really settled down.
The leaders in heavy traffic, that's Tom Jones in the white Liberty, and Dennis Vogel, both long-time ASA drivers, moving to the inside as they see the leaders approach. Vogel's got to be smiling as he sees Tony Raines go by. He said, hey, I don't see that guy with the leaders all that often. I'm happy. He's one of us.
Do you think, Larry, that perhaps Mike Eddy is running just as hard as he needs to keep Raines and Hansen behind him, perhaps preserving the tires in this race?
I absolutely think that Mike Eddy is basically controlling the pace of this race right now. Apparently Hansen wasn't running quite as quickly as Mike wanted him to do. So he put the pass on him, took a few laps, and once he got the lead, he actually pulled his horns in just a little bit. The mid-race recap, the AC-Delco Challenge Series here at Nashville, the leader is Mike Eddy. We have had 6 lead changes among 4 drivers. Mike Eddy, the current race leader. 6 cautions for 27 laps, and 6 cars are now out of the race.
Tony Raines now moves again right in behind Mike Eddy as they're in some line traffic. They've gone underneath local driver Tom Harrington and a former professional football player now to the outside of John Olson in car number 44. And Raines seems to be content to sit in that position. You know, he's made his way to the front, and I think he too, Larry, is biding his time. All 3 of those drivers are showing great restraint at the moment. Let's move on.
There is Darrell Waltrip to update you on Waltrip. He has moved in to the number 5 position. Darrell Waltrip has definitely gained ground on the race leaders. He is only about 2 corners, the distance of either 1 and 2 or 3 and 4 behind Mike Eddy. Mike Eddy is a little more steady than Larry Newber is right now, but Mike Eddy continues to lead. And Darrell Waltrip is more than lurking in the shadows. He's charging up. Well, Ralph Shaheen is following this race also, and he is in Mike Eddy's pits. What about it, Ralph? Any insight on Eddy's plans right now?
Well, we're going to ask Howard Thomas, his crew chief. Howard, can Mike keep up this pace that he's running right now, or is he right where he wants to be?
Well, he's kind of taking it easy right now. The car's a little loose. It's real slippery out there as the track surface is real hot. He's just kind of holding his own.
Is he holding up physically inside the car? Is everything all right?
Yeah, it's pretty warm in there, but he's doing okay.
Well, Mike Eddy can always do better when he's out front.
Absolutely, Ralph. And Mike Eddy has been out front most of the 1991 season. We mentioned that 6 cars are out of this race. Among them, for you ASA regulars, as we're looking at Dennis Lampman, perhaps he will be the 7th car of the race. Lampman was involved in the incident that took Harold Fair out of the race. And Dennis Lampman, having his finest season in ASA racing at A1 Service Company Pontiac, is crawling back to the pits. He stops at the entrance to corner number 3, and he is out of this race. Among the 6 other cars confirmed out of competition, car number 5 is Jeff Neal, 14 is Terry Baldry, and we'll run the rest of them down for you when we come back from this commercial break. We're at Nashville. We're live. This is ASA. Pitsar Supermarket. Ralph Shaheen is there shopping.
We're with Mike Eddy, and he's picked up a couple of tires. A little bit of trouble getting the tires away. He took on right side tires, and he almost flipped Tony Raines as he exited the pit lane. Tony Raines beat him out of the pit. Eddy got right side tires, and they did decide to change the stagger a little bit. Let me get over here to Howard real quick. Howard, did you change the stagger on that set? Well, he's talking to him right now. If you can hang with me for 1 second, we'll see what Mike says to him off of the radio. He's talking to Mike right now, and let's see if we can get back in here to Howard. Well, I'll tell you what, they're still talking. We'll come back to you.
Hey, Ralph, it was a great pit stop, but guess who is right in front of Mike Eddy? Pan a little bit to the right, and there is a black and silver and bright orange and white car. Yep, the number is 17. He's led and won a few races here at Nashville. Darrell Waltrip has now moved ahead of Mike Eddy. Now, we don't know at this moment, because pit stops are not completely over, who will turn out as the lead car, but it appears as though it will probably be Scott Hansen, followed by Bob Seneca. Yeah, there it is. Now we can confirm it. The Green Bay, Wisconsin driver, Scott Hansen, running occasional Winston Cup races this year, as well as some other outstanding unsanctioned late model races, will assume the lead here, and Bob Seneca, too, with a great pit stop, is now second. So the old veterans, the people who have won most of these races, and they keep creeping back up to the top, Rob.
Well, they sure do. And this is just typical Bob Seneca style racing, and that is be there to the midpoint and then charge to the front. He currently runs in the 2nd position. Raines with a good pit stop is 3rd. The best pit stop of the bunch, as you've already alluded to. Darrell Waltrip, he's in 4th position. We're showing Mike Eddy now in 5th. Jay Sauter is in the 6th spot. Johnny Benson, who's having tire problems, needed that yellow flag. He's in 7th. Joe Shear is in the 8th position in car number 36, and Tim Steele is still on the lead lap, hanging tough in car number 89. He's in 9th. 2 other automobiles remaining on the lead lap. Kent Stauffer in car number 90. He's been there all day, and the 45 machine of Dave Jackson. We're still showing those cars unofficially, 11 of them as on the lead lap.
Bob Seneker, we were just looking at, is the all-time leader in victories in ASA. He has won 66 times. Mike Eddy has moved into 3rd position this year, getting around Dick Trickle. He has won 31 times in his ASA career.
Well, the leaders come to the start-finish line with a number of lap cars to contend with as they drop down into turn number 1. As the drivers were instructed in the meeting, the fast line later on in the race moves up on the racetrack, so the lapped automobiles of Tom Jones and Terry Baldwin drop down low. Scott Hansen still has Kenny Adams and Tom Harrington right in front of him, and Bob Seneker suddenly starting to show some strength in car number 84 as he runs right in on the back bumper of
And there's Waltrip moving in, and what happened on that move was that Kenny Adams went to the outside of Tom Harrington, not realizing it was one of the race leaders right behind him. Hansen had to jump on the binders, exactly a situation like Ken Schrader found himself in yesterday's practice, which deposited him very rudely on the outside wall.
Darrell Waltrip boxed in beautifully by car number 25, Tony Raines, as he forced the NASCAR veteran to the outside of Tom Harrington. That's something that does not bode well for everybody else. I saw Waltrip drive that car right down below the yellow line in turn number 1. It's handling well.
I imagine that we've got a lot of race leaders very unhappy with Kenny Adams. He got himself stuck out there in the racing lane, and they've had to zig and zag to get around him and John Olson. Now, Olson in the Terry Labonte painted light blue number 44 is running the proper racing line to be lapped. Adams finally is able to drop down low. The leaders do get by.
So far, no real surprises in this race, Larry. We did expect the front row to fare well and continue to run well, though they've experienced their share of minor problems. But they continue to be in the top 4. Mike Eddy has dropped to 5th position, and for the moment, the front-running quintet seems to be separating themselves from the 6th-place car of Jay Sauter.
It is Hansen. It is Seneker beginning to show signs he would like to lead this race. 3rd is Tony Raines, the youngster that, if there is a surprise in the top 5, it is he. Darrell Waltrip is 4th, and Mike Eddy, for win number 4, that's in a row, is 5th.
Scott Hansen down on the bottom side of the racetrack as they exited turn 2 and headed down that 600-foot back straightaway. He's forced Bob Seneker to the high groove. Seneker doesn't seem to mind as he's moved alongside as they come off turn number 4. And he just may have the advantage as they go down into the first turn in a battle for 3rd place as well.
The high side is certainly the longer way around, but you can keep the RPMs up. Hansen slips and slides coming out of corner number 2, bounces over the tunnel, but manages to stay off of the left side of Bob Seneker. And we have our next new race leader. Bob Seneker, the all-time race leader in ASA, takes over here at Nashville.
I talked to Ted Musgrave yesterday afternoon. As I said, he had pretty much conceded the race to car number 17, Darrell Waltrip. He said that Darrell Waltrip had something in the rear end. We think he's got what's called a ratchet rear end, which works like a limited slip differential, allows both tires to keep good bite on the racetrack.
And he is once again beginning to show signs that, hey, I would like to get to the front. Waltrip has his work cut out for him right now. We've seen Tony Raines be among the fastest cars on the track during the last 30 or 40 laps that run under green. Tony has seemingly backed off of the pace a little bit, but not enough to allow Waltrip to get by.
I think Waltrip is smart enough and shrewd enough to know that we're still relatively early in this race. Still over 50 laps to go, and a lot of time, a lot of things can yet transpire. Most of the drivers, without doubt, anticipate at least one more caution flag. They don't want to run the risk of wearing out a set of tires now with the possibility of a lengthy green, which could put them a lap down.
In point of fact, we have 92 laps now to go. Most of these cars probably can go the rest of this race in the fuel that they have. But if we see another yellow, as less and less cars fall off of, there are more and more cars fall off of the lead lap, it is likely all the leaders will pit if we have another yellow.
A number of the drivers were a bit reluctant to talk about their pit strategies for today. But as we remind you once again, as an economizing measure, the driver's only permitted to change 2 tires, any 2, on any given yellow flag pit stop. And most of the drivers did reveal to us that what they anticipated was a change of 3 right side sets of tires and perhaps just a single set of left side Goodyear Racing Eagles. Bob Seneca at the moment is stretching his advantage slightly over Scott Hansen. Last lap, 21.88 seconds. So they're not running nearly as fast as they were earlier. No doubt the heat has a lot to do with it. Waltrip is still pressuring Tony Raines for that third position, but that kid is just not going to give it to him.
A patient Darrell Waltrip is pressing as best that you can at this stage of a race when you're attempting to preserve your tires. The crafty veteran that Waltrip is, perhaps he feels inside the cockpit, hey, guys, I have made my last pit stop. The tires I have on now, they're the ones that are taking me to the finish. Then again, maybe not. But Waltrip knows this track so well, and be rest assured that Waltrip is working with a whole lot more than his right foot in his hands. That head is a grinding away.
That time into turn number 3, Darrell went in low and let the machine drift up ever so slightly. Raines was not intimidated as he continues to hang tough on the high side of the racetrack. He has a car that seems to come off the corners extremely well. Darrell's works at its best at the end of the straightaway, Larry.
Waltrip on the low side, sliding out of corner number 4. Now he asserts himself, and the crowd roars its approval. There is no question that he is the hometown favorite, Darrell Waltrip, who has won so many times on the Nashville Motor Raceway. Incidentally, speaking about winning often, I want to make a call to Mike Alexander, who many of you recognize as certainly potentially one of the most outstanding late model race drivers in the country. He has won 4 of 7 races here of the local weekly Saturday night races, although after last night's victory, he was disqualified. And it was very depressing because he also entered this race with an ASA car, which did not fit the template, and he was disqualified from this race. So Mike has had in one hand a victorious weekend and one that's self-gratifying, but on the other hand, a very disappointing one too. But Mike certainly appears to be back.
Bob Seneca's lead now over second position. Scott Hansen has grown to 2.8 seconds. Visually, it doesn't appear that large. I think it's going to shrink dramatically as Seneca moves in on some lap traffic once again. He's the real grassroots kind of guy, Larry. He said his favorite food when asked, what do you think? A hamburger.
Yep. I think that's probably a very popular cuisine in Nashville. He's going to definitely be right at home here and at home on TNN. Seneca continues to lead in heavy traffic. He looks to the second lane, has thoughts about lane number 3. He says, nope, I'm going to drop down low. I see Hansen there, and they're giving me room on the low side, and my car's working there. So Seneca now decides to the high side of Dave Jackson, the Cincinnati, Ohio driver, in that orange number 45, and he finds plenty of racing room there and continues his march through the lap cars.
Lap machines to contend with. The margin has shrunk from 2.8 seconds 2 laps ago to 0.8 of a second the last time around, and it is even smaller this time by the start-finish line.
Mike Eddy runs in 5th position right now. He seems to have lost a little ground to the race leaders, but we still have quite a ways to go. Ralph, what do you think? Is he in trouble, or is this just his race pace?
Well, Larry, take a look at these tires. These are the ones that just came off of Mike Eddy's car. Remember the ones we showed you from Darrell Waltrip and all the gunk he had built up on those? We said those weren't too bad. Look how smooth these are. They almost look brand new. This is the set that had just come off of Mike Eddy's car in his last pit stop. Now, we also asked his crew chief if he was going to need more gas. He said, no, sir, we can go the rest of the way on fuel, but we might stop once more for more of these. Now, Mike Eddy also got beat out of the pits, and he wasn't too happy about that. His crew chief said, yeah, he's real mad about it. It'll just make him drive harder, they said.
Uh-oh. We have seen that scenario many times in ASA racing. One of the things that every other competitor on the racetrack does not want to do for any reason is to make Mike Eddy angry. When he's angry, he's at his best.
Well, it's happened several times, and Rex Robbins, the president of the American Speed Association, has a ton of stories to tell. Mike was roundly booed in the last ASA race at the home track of Bob Seneca when he was introduced, and Rex said, hey, we might as well just give Eddy the money. When he gets booed like that, he gets mad and he's going to win, and he did.
Well, there was a time when they called Mike the friendly polar bear. That was a reference to his size. He's very quiet, except when he steps behind the wheel of a race car, he's a lion. You're looking at a live 1992 shot. That's the only nationwide Pontiac that's seeing any action today. Not being driven by Mike Eddy, however, Rob.
No, and I'm not sure that Mike would like to be out there at all today.
Although it's probably getting better traction than the full-size ASA late models would on this track. The race, by the way, has officially been canceled. We will show you the conclusion of that exciting 1991 race. A couple of drivers have been gracious enough to stand by with us, and right now down in the pits, Ralph's going to give them a talk.
One of the people we have with us now, Larry, is a guy who's really not going to mind coming back next week since this is basically his backyard. That's Tom Harrington, lives right around the corner from here, about 15 minutes away. And Tom, you've got to be feeling real good about the car that you have here this year. It's one of the best qualifying efforts you've had.
Oh, yeah. We were looking forward to, well, everything from driver introductions. I'm not used to being introduced up near the front. We do have a good car. It's a new Howe car. We have a new engine program with engines from Neil Hanowick and a new crew chief, and everything's looking good. We qualified 6th, and we were looking forward to a good race here in my hometown.
We're looking forward for real good things out of Tom Harrington. It's the first new car he's had in some 8 years of racing, so we expect a lot out of him. And one guy we hope to see in Victory Circle this year. It'll be the first time we could get him in there. Is this new car what it's going to take, Tony Raines, to put you in victory lane?
I think it's a good shot. You know, we'll find out after we get to running some green laps, you know, what the car wants, and we'll make adjustments, and hopefully we'll be there.
Well, they'll have an opportunity to go back home and play with a little bit more before they come back here and race next week.
Ralph, everybody had the obligation of coming up with a new car
Absolutely.
this year, but there was a very important reason for it. This is still very professional racing. Obviously, the television is back for 1992, but still, that strand of economy stays.
Well, Larry, the cars are not only different visually, but the beauty goes more than skin deep. All of the machines are built, the center section, the part that protects the driver, built out of the same shops, and then each team is permitted to add their own suspension pieces, their own engines, and so on and so forth. But they retain the things that have made ASA so special: the coil-over shocks, the rack and pinion steering systems, and most importantly, that 9-to-1 V6 engine.
And something else that has happened this year as a result of it, we are seeing new sponsors coming to this organization. So very important for the lifeblood. Wynn's Oil, for instance, is the sponsor that has come to ASA. They've never been here before, despite many, many years in motor racing.
And the Blue Coral people, we know, have been here too with that new Autofom, that product. So not just the local garages sponsor ASA cars anymore, it's the big corporate names.
Well, as we promised, we're going to show you the end of that race from the 1991 season. You still got Eddie in the race, Seneca's still in it, and so is Darrell Waltrip. So you never know. Stay with us. At Milwaukee earlier this season, Tim Steele was knocked out of that event because of a crash. He was officially awarded the 31st starting position. It looks like he has designs of getting back into this race. There is he spinning in that red car on the right-hand side of your screen.
You can also see at the top of the screen that car number 66, Glenn Allen Jr., appeared to make contact with Tom Harrington, and that may have been what created the damage to car number 66. You can see that the crew is looking at that car, but they don't seem to be doing so at much of a feverish pace whatsoever. I think they've pretty much decided that the afternoon is over. Heavy damage to the right front suspension of the base zone construction Chevrolet.
They have had an up-and-down season. We commented earlier that they won the first race of the season, thereby becoming, obviously, the first points leader for 1991. But from then, it's not all been downhill, but there have been more declines in the roller coaster than there have been inclines, that's for sure.
Well, it looked like Glenn had the race won at Cayuga when he ran out of fuel with 9 laps to go. And yesterday in the pit area, perhaps some very disturbing news for that young man. As we understand, there may be some financial problems for that racing team.
Ralph, you can update us on Glenn?
Glenn, how are you doing? Doing good. On the parade lap start of the race, we broke 2 valve springs, so the motor was only hitting on 4 cylinders. And just trying to stay out of trouble, and 2 cars crashed on the backstretch, got together. We had nowhere to go, so we threw off the right front. So this base zone construction Chevrolet is done for today. You know, we've lined up some cylinders trying to get some points, bonus points, but it's not helping us out, so we're just going to park it.
A long weekend for Glenn Allen finally came to an end.
All right, Ralph, thank you very much. Glenn Allen, who came into the 1991 season with so much anticipation, is on the sidelines today. We would like to take a moment to remind you that the announcers for this telecast have been contracted for and approved by the American Speed Association. Any use, rebroadcast, or other transmission of this telecast without the written consent of the American Speed Association and Group 5 Sports is strictly prohibited. How's that?
Excellent.
I think that kind of covers that story.
Pit stops. Rule of the day, the last few minutes. And while we were at break, some shake-up in the running order. Scott Hansen reassumes the pole position. And look who's running right behind him in second. The guy that started right beside him at the green flag, Darrell Waltrip, sets up a tremendous shootout to the finish.
Well, Tom Jones and the blue number 22 of Dave Stamm are immediately behind the pace car in front of Waltrip. Let's see which way they go. It's likely they'll go down to the bottom as instructed in the driver's meeting. They do. They stay off the throttle. The leaders flash by on the outside.
Seen a lot of youngsters running strongly this afternoon, but for now, it's the veterans out in front. Scott Hansen, Darrell Waltrip running 1-2. Right behind him, Bob Seneker and Mike Eddy. 4 cars in quartet right together as Eddy drops down low. He wants 3rd position.
Approaching the 200-lap point. We will go 250 laps. So 20% of this race remains. It's not been a race that's been dominated by any one car. But those 4 cars up front have spent most of the afternoon in the lead.
Well, you can see that battle for 3rd position, and it has been replayed between these 2 drivers so many times over the last 2 seasons. They've traded paint, they've swapped ends with each other, they've had crosswords, but I think they leave it on the racetrack. At the drivers' meeting at Cayuga a couple of weeks ago, Mike Eddy said, "Hey, Bob, come sit next to me," and he said, "No, Mike, I'm not ready to trade paint with you quite yet."
Well, if you're at home watching, it's time to pick your favorites with 20% of the race to go. One of the newest stars of the American Speed Association, Scott Hansen, sets the pace. He's in that white red trim number 53. If he's your favorite, time to start pulling right now. And then you have Darrell Waltrip, who you're looking at right now through Mike Eddy's front windshield. Darrell Waltrip is one of the historic stars of the American Speed Association. First winning one of these races back in 1972. That's Mike Eddy you're riding with. He's the man right now who is the toast of the ASA town in 1991. The old veteran, right behind him, another veteran. The all-time leading winner in the American Speed Association is Bob Seneker, who's going to come home victorious today.
Mike Eddy moved to the low side, put the bumper on the rear end of Darrell Waltrip's car number 17, and appropriated 2nd position, relegating Waltrip to 3rd. Seneker right there to challenge should any of them bobble in 4th position in car number 84.
I'm going to make a guess here. Knowing Mike Eddy and his personality, I think that Mike Eddy's thinking right now inside his helmet, hey, I think this one's between me and the guy in black.
Well, here he goes. Mike Eddy wants the lead, pulls alongside Scott Hansen, a slight advantage crossing the start-finish line, and he's gunning for 4 in a row, Larry.
By the guy in black, I mean black and orange and white. I think Eddy thinks it's between him and Waltrip.
I wasn't sure what you meant.
I understand.
Waltrip is right there, lurking in the wings. He runs 3rd. He's down low. Tucks right in behind Mike Eddy. And I think he feels like if he stays behind Eddy, he can appropriate 2nd if they can keep Scott up on the high side of the racetrack.
Right now, Mike is really having to labor to get underneath Hansen, even though that Eddy is on the preferred line. Hansen, with seemingly slightly better horsepower, but he's being outmaneuvered in these long corners here at Nashville. Eddy finally gets underneath. As you pointed out, there's Waltrip. Now Hansen's trying to close the door. He looks for room down to the inside, but there is no room as Waltrip immediately and very smartly had his nose inside of Hansen's left rear fender.
Certainly Mike Eddy is looking only forward, but were he to look behind, this is exactly what he would see. Look at the distance there between Darrell Waltrip and Scott Hansen. It narrowed pretty significantly as they exited turn 4 and headed down the main straightaway. Hansen trying to force Waltrip as low as he possibly can, trying to force him to scrub off speed on the bottom.
It is Eddy, Hansen, Waltrip, and Seneker. The first 4 are running very tight as they have battled with each other, plus worked their way around slower traffic. Tony Raines begins to make his presence felt again. He runs in 5th. He's just outside of the picture. Every once in a while, he creeps in. In 6th position, these are unofficial, the rundown, is John Benson Jr. In 7th position is Joe Shear. 8th is Jay Sauter. 9th is Kent Stauffer. And in 10th position, Bruce Vanderlaan. That's the unofficial rundown after 205 laps of the top 10.
This juncture, we've had 9 lead changes among 5 drivers, 8 caution flags for 37 laps at the 200-lap mark for the Delta Voyager 250.
Waltrip now decides to try the high side. Interesting. Waltrip was running that conservative line down on the bottom, trying to toe the mark on that yellow line that marks the inside of the banking in the racetrack. Couldn't get around. Hansen says, maybe there is something to that higher groove. More RPMs may get me past. And sure enough, 1 corner and he's there.
Been surprised to see Bob Seneker using the same line as he now pulls up alongside Scott Hansen. And we've got a battle for the 3rd position. Can Waltrip close in on Eddy? Look how quickly he's narrowing the gap between 1st and 2nd.
Ralph, what's going on down in the pits? Are they happy with
Well,
Waltrip?
Larry, if you can believe this or not, Eddie Jones, the crew chief for Darrell Waltrip, just told me that according to Darrell, the car's not handling exactly the way Darrell would like it. From where I'm standing, he's able to take that car anywhere he wants to go with it. If that's the case, Mike Eddy is really going to have his hands full.
Yeah, Ralph, I think you're exactly right. If that car is not handling well. And there's Waltrip looking to the inside of Eddie, but Eddie is putting a lap on Dennis Vogel. He had to move up there to get around. And Waltrip does seem to be handling just a little better in the corners with Eddie. But traffic is so heavy, there's no room to go.
No, there certainly isn't. Now they'll put another lap on John Olson in car number 44. He moves over diplomatically and allows them to pass. Right behind them coming the third, fourth, and fifth place cars of Seneca, Hansen, and Raines.
Well, Eddie takes Darrell just as high as he possibly can. You are now riding with Mike Eddy. There's a lot of thinking going on in those two race cars. Mike Eddy trying to figure out how wide can I make this car and how fast can I make it go around the corners. And Waltrip waiting for him to steady.
Well, over his racing career, Mike Eddy, with the tremendous success that he's had, Larry, has been asked many times why he has not chosen to go Winston Cup racing. Well, I think today he has an opportunity to reprove that he has the ability should he ever decide to make that decision.
The Nationwide Auto Parts Pontiac, the black gold trim number 88, continues to hold Darrell Waltrip at bay. Darrell Waltrip has won 5 times in his career an American Speed Association main event. We mentioned earlier that Mike Eddy has moved into 3rd on the all-time list this year. He has 31 career wins. Remember, Seneca still sitting on top, basking with 66 career wins. He was virtually unbeatable for about 3 seasons back in the 70s.
Last year, about the midpoint of the racing season, Bob Seneca, he said he would trade a lot of those victories for one championship, and it did finally eventuate.
Good point as we take a look at Mike Eddy. Bob Seneca never was the champion of ASA until a year ago. Darrell Waltrip has said, hey, I've had enough of this. I'm ready to go. Waltrip is turning the heat up.
What a tremendous race. Ted Musgrave had said that it was going to be an all Darrell Waltrip show. He's been a factor, but he sure hasn't been by himself up front.
Ralph, we heard from you about Darrell Waltrip. What about Eddie?
Well, Mike Eddy's crew is saying that Mike is telling him that the car is a little bit loose. He asked them what tires they put on. They told him it was just what he wanted. He said, all right, here we go. There's one thing you can always be sure about with Mike Eddy. It does not matter if the car is right for him. He will find a way to make that car run the way he wants it to.
I think most race fans realize when we're talking about loose, that's when the car goes into the corner and at the back end wants to come around. It point the nose down at the bottom of the racetrack and it wants to spin. One thing that a driver can do if
Here
he's
comes
bold
Waltrip.
enough.
Waltrip looks high, but Mike moves up about a quarter of a lane, holds him back. Waltrip is going to look to start down low, but there's a lap car there. He's got to go high. He loses ground.
As I started to say, if the driver is bold enough, he can drive Larry a bit deeper into the corner.
Here's Waltrip moving to the inside, Rob. I don't think he wants to hear what you got to say. Darrell Waltrip has definitely made the decision. It's time to pass. We have 35 laps to go. Slower traffic in front of Dennis Vogel. Yellow flag. Whoa, tight moment.
And as Mike Eddy and Darrell Waltrip battled Larry, Bob Seneca closed right in on the two of them.
Very interesting. At this moment, we do not know the reason for the yellow flag, but it was certainly unexpected as the race leaders, as well as we, were really concentrating on that battle, and they all had to jump on the binders pretty seriously.
I wondered who might come on pit road this time. Bob Seneca leaving no doubt. He quickly commits to the bottom side of the racetrack. Now look at Mike Eddy and Darrell Waltrip. They stay up high. They may elect to stay on the racetrack.
Seneca, Hansen, Raines, Benson, and Joe Shear are choosing to pit. Vanderlaan, who's also in the top 10, unofficially on the same lap with the leaders, he has pitted. But as you pointed out, Mike Eddy, Darrell Waltrip, and Jay Sauter and Kent Stauffer among the first 10 cars stay out. So they run 1, 2, 3, 4. Here is the traffic as that yellow flag flew. There's Waltrip looking for Scheller on the high side of the racetrack. Eddy on the brakes, slides around Dennis Vogel. He sees Darrell Waltrip running on the outside, but no harm of losing a position there because the yellow was already out, but very anxious moment.
Either Vogel had a problem with his race car or he saw some debris on the racetrack.
32 laps remain in this 250-lap race. It looks like it's going to be a shootout between Mike Eddy and Darrell Waltrip.
You all always want to put on your best show when the folks that sponsor your racing series are on hand, and we see three of the top folks from General Motors and AC-Delco looking on with great anticipation. It's obvious that they're really into this. Archie Long, Brent Snelson, and Gil Cashin all with us this afternoon.
Here is Mike Eddy, who has radioed in from the cockpit saying that there is oil all over the racetrack. There was a spin in turns 3 and 4 executed by Dennis Vogel. He's in that yellow-orange car. You'll see him spinning into to the screen here, and no one else coming into contact with him. There is Vogel, the rest of the field taking evasive action, going to the high side as Dennis is down on the bottom. He'll drop that car down into first gear and pull back out in front of the rest of the crowd, but the yellow flag had already flown, but Eddy and Seneca were so busy with each other, they didn't have an opportunity to see it. Here's the end of that incident.
Well, you can see that Mike Eddy elects to go low. I'm not sure I would have taken that line. With Vogel dropping down to the bottom of the racetrack, he was very fortunate to escape.
But Mike Eddy and Darrell Waltrip survive. Again, they chose not to pit. Now we're inside of 30 laps to go, so definitely in the final stages of this race. Bob Seneca, John Benson Jr., Scott Hansen out of Wisconsin, all those drivers who were threats to win this race chose to come in for new rubber. Waltrip and Eddy did not. And I have a feeling, Ralph, that it was a matter of monkey see, monkey do for Eddy and Waltrip. What do you think?
I think you're right, Larry. This is exactly what this race is going to come down to, according to the crew chiefs of Darrell Waltrip and Mike Eddy. Bias Ply tires from Goodyear. The tires are both on the same cars. Now, Mike Eddy's crew chief was telling me he thinks the tires that are on that car right now are good enough for third place, maybe not much better. He says what we're going to find out now is just how tough Mike Eddy really is.
Ralph, it's a very warm day, and I'm noticing a bit of a sheen or a shine. Are you getting warm down there?
We are very warm down here, Larry.
So.
I'll tell you what. I think the drivers are probably losing a few pounds. I think my camera crew and I are doing the same.
It's got to be very difficult in the cockpit, particularly with all the yellow flags we've had today. That's when the drivers are most uncomfortable because they don't have that 100-mile-an-hour wind blowing through the cockpit. And when they're not busy at work, their mind wanders to other things, and they get very warm at those moments.
Drivers are often asked, what do you do to prepare for a long-distance race in the heat temperatures that feel inside the race car? There's really no physical exercise that you can do. There's no substitute for laps behind the wheel. Yes, if you're in good shape and you're trim and you eat right and all those good things that you often hear about, that helps. But, you know, there's no substitution for just being out there on the race car.
Saw the graphic on Mike Eddy, his career stats well over 50% in the top 5. We commented that we started 32 cars today. 40 actually attempted to qualify for this race. Drivers who showed up here at Nashville who did not get into the field. Len Kubian in car number 92. We'll get back to that list in just a moment. Here are the upcoming ASA races live on TNN. You can see the dates, a couple of weeks, July 14th, July 28th, August 11th from Pennsylvania, the Jennerstown racetrack, and the Minnesota State Fair in September. We are just about ready to go back to green. We'll continue to run down that list of drivers who did not qualify for this race a little later, but the green flag flickers, and Mike Eddy, who's had a chance to breathe, relax, and maybe plot some strategy to hold off Darrell Waltrip, goes back to the front.
I'm not sure those guys chose right by staying out on the racetrack. You just saw back in the pack Bob Seneca and Johnny Benson really moving
Eddy.
up.
Mike Eddy loses the handle in corner number 4. The crowd rises to the occasion. Waltrip senses the kill, moves to the inside. Eddy now really with his hands full.
Well, there's a story that's circulating. The only guy that Dale Earnhardt's afraid of is Mike Eddy. Perhaps the same could be said for Darrell Waltrip.
Somehow Eddy was able to turn back Waltrip. He was way out of shape in corner number 4. Waltrip was neck and neck with him coming down the front straightaway, but somehow Eddy was able to turn him away.
He held his ground back in 3rd position. You can see Jay Sauter in car number 1. He's lurked outside of the top 5 most of the day. Now finds himself in the 3rd position on the racetrack as the battle reforms for the lead.
Inside of 25 laps to go. The drivers who stopped for new tires are still in slower traffic. Bob Seneca looks like he will be the first among those drivers who stopped for new tires to break from the pack. He is about 100 yards behind the leaders. There is Seneca. He has just moved underneath Ken Stauffer. Stauffer had a strong day. He has never contended for the lead, but he's been in the top 5. There's John Benson Jr. in car number 21. New tires. He moves underneath Stauffer.
He picks up the 5th position. Behind him comes car number 53, Scott Hansen, and Tony Raines in the 25 machine. Great racing back in the pack among cars on the lead lap.
Joe Shear is right behind this quartet. Kenny Schrader is in there. We're checking with timing and scoring to see if Schrader is on the lead lap. He had a long pit stop a little earlier. He is 2 laps down, so if you see Schrader, the bright yellow car, he is not in it for top 10.
With less than 25 laps to go, Larry, and maybe this is an unfair question, which of these 2 drivers up front would you say has the greater determination? What would give him that additional incentive?
It's a toss-up. Mike Eddy, it's not so much that he wants to create history and win his 4th win in a row. Mike Eddy wants to win every time out. I think he totally forgets any additional incentive other than winning when he buckles up to race. Darrell Waltrip feels as though he has a lot of pride at stake here. This is his home racetrack. He does not expect to be beaten at Nashville.
Cars contending for 4th position. Johnny Benson, Tony Raines, and Scott Hansen.
Looking at 4th position, there's the trio right there. Benson, Hansen, Raines. Boy, they are all tied together. 2, sometimes 3 abreast around the high bank corners here in the half mile at Nashville. Raines was the quicker one earlier. Hansen gets into the back of John Benson. Benson almost comes around. Hansen leaves him go. The battle resumes.
It appears that both Raines and Hansen have quicker race cars. Benson almost loses it. They come out of turn number 4, and Raines picks up a position.
Twice in that last lap, Scott Hansen was running so much quicker than John Benson. See the damage on the rear of Benson's car. He almost took him out. Unintentionally? Yes, sir.
And the black number 36 of Joe Shear right there to challenge as well. He wants 6th position, and here comes Waltrip.
Lap number 234 goes by. 15 laps to go. Waltrip holds on the high side. He chooses the 2nd lane. He says, I hope the RPMs work. He's a little quicker than Eddie. Eddie says he has a handling problem. Waltrip, a great charge into number 3.
I don't want to say this too loudly, but look who's creeping into the frame in 3rd position with fresh tires on the right side. Bob Seneca, the sneaker, is there to challenge as well.
15 laps to go. Eddie moves up about a half a lane, says, hey, Waltrip, if you're going to pass me, you've got to consider lane number 3. Waltrip with more of an advantage this time, going into corner number 3. They're trading paint. It's black, it's orange, it's silver, it's white. Side by side, there are now 3 of them in this one.
Seneca is winless in 1989. He'd like to do it on national television this afternoon. Waltrip has a slight advantage as they move out of turn number 2. Now Eddie comes back to challenge on the bottom.
Eddie,
what a race!
Eddie just will not give up. He goes over the hump at the tunnel. He almost loses control, but he keeps going straight. Waltrip seemingly had buried Mike Eddy about 3 times in the last 3 laps, but Eddie holds his ground.
Waltrip has the lead. Here comes Seneca. He wants 2nd. Maybe Ralph Shaheen a bit prophetic in saying that Mike Eddy did not have the best handling race car after the last yellow flag.
Look at Seneca. Seneca really dives into corner number 3. Waltrip is looking to the right. He's saying, oh my goodness, I didn't see this guy coming.
Lane Automotive Chevrolet of Bob Seneca without a major sponsor wants the win. He wants the lead. Look from Mike Eddy's viewpoint. Seneca right up on the edge of control. He's right up on the where the track gets very, very slippery.
And Eddie is saying, okay, Seneca, get up alongside. You guys trade some paint. Maybe I can sneak back. But they are putting a little distance between themselves and the 3rd running now, Mike Eddy. Oh, Seneca, look how close he was to the wall.
He obviously has the strongest car out there, but he does not have the most laps on this racetrack. Waltrip is wrestling a beast right now. Larry, did you see that time as he went to turn number 2? Just how sideways he was?
Look at Bob Seneca. Bob Seneca says, I think I can take this guy on the inside. This time by with the completing lap number 238. The scoreboard has gone out. That's a judgment call. I saw 13 laps about 1 lap ago. Seneca really gets a good bite going into number 1 this time.
Out of turn number 2, Dennis Vogel once again comes into play, the lap machine, car number 51.
Oh.
And look at Waltrip's move to the high side.
9 to go this time. I missed by 3 laps. The action has been so hot and heavy, you lose track. Bob Seneca says, I have the faster car. I want to beat this guy. Waltrip says, no way. This is my forest, buddy.
We've got to watch what's going on up front, but back in the pack, a very similar battle for the 4th position. Again, Seneca moves down low. Again, he's alongside Darrell Waltrip. Who's it going to be coming off the 4th corner? A slight edge maybe for Seneca.
And here comes more slower traffic looming ahead, so Waltrip spies it. It's John Olson. He gets as close to Olson as he possibly can, and Seneca has to get out of the throttle.
straightaway with just a handful of laps to go. Darrell Waltrip fighting for all he's worth. He's out of the groove.
Waltrip loses it. Apparently a tire problem, but he comes back to the inside. Oh, wow.
Incredible. Darrell Waltrip reassumes the lead, and this grandstand is going absolutely delirious.
Waltrip apparently has really damaged the tires. He comes almost to a stop. Seneker plows into the tail of Waltrip. Waltrip is almost out of control. If Seneker could somehow just hold on to his emotions, I think he's got him.
Well, if there's a guy that can control his emotions, it's Bob Seneker. He's been called by some folks aloof. He's really just a quiet, introspective type guy until he climbs behind the wheel of a race car.
That last move by Darrell Waltrip after he lost the lead to come back and do the old traditional racing crossover to come back was an artist at work. It was a superlative.
That's a gutsy move. You really put your car in jeopardy when you do that. You run literally on the edge of control when that happens. 5 laps to go, Larry. Has Seneker used up what he had in the way of an advantage with fresher tires?
I'll tell you, it's almost not proper to talk over this. These guys are putting on a terrific show. There's Walter getting out of the groove again. Slower traveling up ahead. Does Seneker have an advantage this time? I don't know. He seems to have lost the edge.
Mike Eddy is still there in car number 88, but he's now fallen about 10 car lengths in rears. 4 laps to go, and again Seneker down to the low side.
Just a half-mile track. It takes about 21 seconds to get around. We have about 80 seconds to go. After crossing the start-finish line this time, about 60 seconds to go. Lap 247 is now in the books. Waltrip slides to corner number 1 and 2, but he has a car length advantage. Bob Seneker dives to the low side in corner number 3, lap number 248 coming up this time. Seneker is all over the racetrack. He is out of tires. Waltrip, we suspect, is out of tires. 2 laps to go.
Well, Darrell has been the proverbial cat with 9 lives as he's had lap traffic to utilize several times, but he may not need those lap cars.
A lap and a half to go. 30 seconds to go. Seneker says, I got to charge a little harder. How many tires do you have left there? That are good. The white flag this time around. We have just 20 seconds to go in this race. Darrell Waltrip looks like he's in control, but Seneker won't say die. He moves to the inside.
There have been 10 lead changes, maybe one more, maybe not. 2 drivers, 2 divergent opinions. Here comes Seneker. We're going to have a battle to the checkered off turn number 4.
They are side by side, fender to fender. Seneker wiggles just a little bit, and Darrell Waltrip, much to the delight of an extremely partisan crowd, comes home the winner. The reputation is safe.
What an amazing finish to this race. Darrell Waltrip has not competed in an ASA event this year. He brings a 4-year-old machine to the racetrack, does some trick things to the suspension on the rear end of that race car, and drives the Western Auto AC-Delco Chevrolet Lumina to a victory. And I'll tell you, he's leading a charmed life wherever he races in 1991.
Ralph Shaheen, the one thing that I really wish that I could do in every race was to have the opportunity to interview the race winner, and you're going to have a real thrill this time, Ralph. That was a terrific race. I hope you had an opportunity to see it down there. Waltrip has got to be excited. This was a race that went literally right down to the wire, and he really showed the old aggressive Darrell Waltrip is still there.
Waltrip won the race, Larry, but I think what, if nothing else, was proven to race fans this afternoon is that these ASA drivers are the toughest competitors, the toughest hombres on the short tracks.
Well, Darrell Waltrip, the man who in the 1960s and 70s owned the Nashville Motor Speedway, proved that in 1991 he still got the title. Waltrip's words once he emerged from the car, "Eat your heart out, Dale Earnhardt." He was very enthusiastic after that victory, as well he should have been. It was one of the most dramatic races in Nashville Raceway history. Darrell Waltrip winning the ASA race. Now, we're not through yet. We've got some more useful information for you, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. This is a live shot Easter Sunday, 1992 from Nashville, Tennessee, where the ASA races for this season have been rained out. It would have been very tough to emulate what we saw in 1991. Well, standing down on the pitch, yes, he's still out there. It's still raining. He's still getting wet if he ventures outside the tent. With the Tim Tom Show is Ralph Shaheen.
Thank you, Larry. There's some good news and some bad news here for the drivers. And Tom Jones, what is that good news and bad news?
Well, the good news is we got a little more time to work on the cars for next week, but the bad news is we didn't get the race today, and there's a lot of folks out there watching, and I wish they could have seen a good race here.
And to expand on that just a little bit, for instance, Tom had some engine problems with his carburetor. They'll get that to fix, but then they got to run a lot in this next couple of weeks, and at the end of the year here, Tim Fido, well, you get to hand over the Pat Shower Award.
Yeah, that's kind of a sad note for us, but we're going to hopefully we'll be getting a new award, and I'd like that to be the championship. We're trying real hard this year. We got a good team and a lot of things going for us, and we're really trying hard for that.
And they'll be back here to start it up next week, Larry.
Ralph, we'll see you next in Milwaukee. Rob, a lot of races to come here.
Well, certainly that one coming up on May the 10th, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, the Badgerland 150 from the Milwaukee Mile. And I think the next up on the schedule, this is the televised schedule. The Players Limited 200, one of 5 races this season to be televised from Canada.
There will be 8 televised races in all. There you see the remaining 3 races that are on the live television schedule for the 1992 season. In all, there'll be 17 races on the ASA schedule in 1992, and it's going to be a banner year because we are celebrating the 25th anniversary, and those new cars are sure to provide a lot of excitement.
We just watched a great race. This one would have even been better today.
Well, we're sorry that you didn't get to see it at home, and certainly we are also sorry. For Ralph Shaheen and Rob Albright, this is Larry Newber saying we'll see you at the races the next time on ASA and TNN.